to Profiles in Quality, an interview program with the leading names in quality management. I'm Mike Richmond, your host. Today we return to our conversation with lean proponent Mike Micklewright, shot last month at the IMTS show. In our last episode with Mike, he spoke about Deming and the benefits of being inflexible in principles. This time, he opens up about the true costs of offshoring and outsourcing. I'm glad to hear you talk about outsourcing and offshoring. That's one thing I want to ask you about. Chinese companies and Indian companies compete very heavily with American manufacturers, mostly on price. So the American manufacturer feels stuck because they're stuck within a paradigm where cost is all important. How do those American companies get beyond that paradigm and look at it in terms of how can we compete by offering something else, other than cost?
Well, I guess number one, that's the most important question is about the cost itself. I mean, is it truly lowest cost? Does China and India provide products at a lower cost? And of course everyone says, well, yeah, absolutely, sure. I mean, Joe Petty of JP and Associates, he's done some studies, and he basically said that on average, most companies see that there's the price differential of products bought in China compared to the States is about 55% lower. But then you add in all of the other hidden costs. You know, there's so many hidden costs. The difference really comes down to maybe about 10%. Okay. Now, you know, the hidden costs are what? Recalls and repair and warranty work and excess transportation and premium freight and the cost of sending your management over there to set up an organization and deal with the government, and the cost of sending engineers over there to work on problems, and the cost of not having the engineers back at your home facility, and the cost of transportation within the facility, and the cost of not having any kind of leverage because you have to deal with the bad product from these other countries because you can't wait for there's many, many different excessive costs that's associated with it. And unfortunately, I'm not saying that it's all wrong, and offshoring and outsourcing is all wrong, but the problem is we've done it too much. And some companies have understood and found out that the return on investment is actually negative if they add in all the costs. Now, the one thing that scares me the most is that I've seen a lot of companies, they make the decision based on price tag alone. That was one of Deming's 14 points. Don't make sourcing decisions based on price tag alone. And here we're doing it today more than ever before. And I see it all the time. So a president says, oh, 55% price reduction. Well, this is a no-brainer. Go do it. Don't worry about the other costs. And so what do? They end up paying for transportation. They end up paying for the product when it leaves China before it ever gets here, and all these excess costs. So I guess that's the main first question, or the first issue that has to be looked at is it really a big price differential or not if you factor in all the costs? The most inaccurate data that you have is at the very beginning when you just compare price tag. Okay, because a lot of people, they don't want to, they say, you know, if you factor in recalls and warranty work and repair and all that, that's guesswork. You don't know anything, but at least it's something and it's real. Right. Whereas if you just assume it's zero, that's the most inaccurate data that you have. So a lot of companies are making wrong decisions. And it's kind of like, again, let's jump on the bandwagon, Six Sigma, lean, outsourcing. Everyone else is doing it and not thinking about it. And I think that's one of the most important things is to develop that sourcing decision model and truly try to capture all of those costs.
And how do you do that? Because it's difficult many times to capture those softer costs, especially costs that may have to do with exposure, that you may expose your consumer possibly to danger from inadequately processed foods or toys or whatever it may be.
Right.
How do you calculate those costs?
It's difficult. And there are experts out there that do this. I mean, but you have to make the attempt. I don't have an answer because it depends on each and every single different corporation. There's a class from AME called Lean Purchasing. It tells you how to calculate the cost of lead times. Okay? Lead time has a cost, and it shows you how to do that. And there's different methods and methodologies. You do have to make some assumptions, but again, those assumptions, at least you're addressing the topic rather than just saying, I ignore it. I'm not even going to address it. But the biggest thing is that even when you do a return on investment analysis, it's still a short-term analysis. And that's the scariest part, is because when, you know, one of the biggest costs is that you could lose your business. Absolutely. I mean, look at Schwinn. Schwinn is a fine example of that. Schwinn was outsourced the bikes to be made overseas, and then that organization encouraged them to outsource the engineering, and after the agreement was up, after 10 years, all of a sudden Schwinn is now a giant bicycle, okay, overseas. Schwinn went under and was bought out by a different organization. Okay, that's a huge cost. Now, how do you factor that in? I don't know, but you have to address it somehow. And there are some creative minds out there. You have to come up with ways. And you know what? You will combat. People will argue, well, that's not right. Well, this is not right. You're overestimating this cost. That's fine. We want that. You want people to discuss and really make a sound decision rather than just making a blind decision, which so many organizations are really doing.
Absolutely.